I've lived in Briar Creek my whole life. 24 years in a town small enough that everyone knows who bought a new truck, who got fired, and who cheated on whom long before the people involved can even process it themselves. It's the kind of place you dream of leaving when you're a teenager, but somehow still end up here, working, paying bills, and convincing yourself that routine is the same thing as stability. Before last winter, I could have told you exactly how the rest of my life might look. Steady job at Hawthorne Hardware, cheap apartment above the laundromat, maybe a fishing trip on weekends if my truck behaved, and dinners at my mom's once a week where she'd ask, again, if I was seeing anyone yet. I never imagined that one random drive down the old industrial road on a cold, wet night would tear that predictable picture in half. It was early November, one of those evenings when the sky hangs low and heavy like it wants to squeeze the last bit of daylight out of you. I had closed the store late because the new manager insisted on reorganizing the aisles even though nobody shops at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. My head was pounding, my phone was dead, and all I wanted was a hot shower and the leftover pizza waiting in my fridge. The industrial area sits on the far side of town, past Miller's Auto Yard and the abandoned factory that hasn't produced anything in 15 years besides rust. The road is narrow, cracked, and half the streetlights don't work. Most people avoid it at night. But it cuts 10 minutes off my route, and after a long shift, 10 minutes is 10 minutes. I noticed the silver Honda before I noticed the woman standing next to it. The car was pulled onto the gravel shoulder, hazard lights blinking faintly in the drizzle. At first, I assumed she was calling someone. But as I got closer, I saw her holding her phone up toward the sky like a desperate lighthouse operator trying to summon a miracle. Everyone in town knows that whole stretch is a cell service graveyard. I slowed down automatically. I know you're supposed to be careful stopping for strangers at night, but there was something about the way she stood there, shoulders tense, hair plastered slightly to her cheek from the mist, tapping her foot like she was arguing with the universe, that made me roll down my window. "You okay?" I asked. Her head snapped toward me. For a split second, her eyes looked sharp, defensive, then softer, almost relieved. "My battery died," she said. "And apparently the cell towers around here died 20 years ago." Her voice, I don't know how to describe it. A little tired, a little amused, and deeper than most women my age. The kind of voice that hints at stories she'll never tell unless she trusts you. "Pop the hood," I said. "I can give you a jump." She hesitated. I could see her thinking, evaluating me, weighing whether she could rely on a stranger in the dark. Then she nodded. While I hooked up the cables, she hugged her coat tighter around her. The faint glow from my truck's headlights lit up her face. Early to mid-30s, maybe 35. Strong brow, defined cheekbones, that kind of quiet beauty that doesn't need attention to exist. Her eyes were striking, not in color, but in expression. They looked like they'd seen too much and learned not to show it. "Thanks," she said quietly, watching the sparks crackle as the cables connected. "No problem." When her engine finally rumbled back to life, she let out a breath that almost sounded like relief mixed with exhaustion. "I owe you one," she said. "Really?" She stepped back toward her car, hand on the door handle, then turned again like she remembered something important. "I'm Claire," she said. "Evan," I replied. She gave me a small smile. Not flirtatious, not overly grateful, just real. One of those smiles that stays with you longer than it should. She drove off, taillights fading into the fog, leaving me alone on the wet asphalt with a feeling I couldn't shake. Like I had just stepped into something bigger than I understood. I didn't know it then, but people would soon warn me about her. Every single one of them. They'd say she was complicated, cold, unstable, heartbreak waiting to happen. They'd say she'd ruin my life. And maybe, in some ways, they were right. But that night, all I saw was a woman standing alone in the dark who looked like she hadn't had anyone choose her without hesitation in a long, long time. And I didn't realize how much I wanted to be that person until it was already far too late to turn back. The next morning, I walked into Hawthorne Hardware expecting the usual routine. Clock in, sweep the front aisle, pretend to care about drill bits while old men argued loudly about which brand was built like they used to. But instead, I walked right into a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Mason, my coworker who always smelled vaguely like gasoline, was leaning on the counter, talking to Mr. Humphrey, the The store regular who somehow knows everything about everyone despite never leaving his porch. Yeah, she was out by the auto yard last night, Mason said. My cousin drove past and saw her Honda. Probably another fight. Or another one of her meltdowns. Humphrey chuckled like gossip was his favorite sport. She's always been unpredictable. Shame, though. Pretty woman. Pretty dangerous, Mason corrected. I didn't care about their conversation until I heard the name. Claire. My stomach tightened a little. I wasn't planning to say anything, but Mason noticed me hovering near the employee break shelf. You hear us, Evan? He asked, grinning like he had something valuable to teach me. We're talking about Claire Weaver. You know her? I shrugged. Not really. Just helped her jump her car last night. Mason's expression changed instantly, mirroring the same look people get when they spot a friend walking toward a clearly marked "Do Not Enter" sign. Oh man, he said, whistling. Stay away from her. I frowned. Why? He passed Humphrey a look that said, You want to tell him, or should I? Humphrey leaned on his cane. Son, that woman's been through more drama than a daytime soap. 2 divorces. Both husbands left town after. She had something going with a fireman years back. That ended ugly. Ugly how? I asked before I could stop myself. No one had exact details, of course. Small-town rumors never come with receipts, but that never stopped people from filling in the blanks. She's cold, Mason said. Impossible to please. 1 minute she's sweet, next minute she goes quiet for days. She's got this, I don't know, dark vibe. Humphrey nodded. People say she drinks alone a lot. And she dates younger guys, Mason added, lowering his voice. Messes with their heads. My cousin said she's like a storm that wrecks everything. They spoke about her like she was some kind of legend, a warning carved into the town's culture. And the more they talked, the more I realized none of them had actually spoken to her. They only knew the version of her shaped by whispers, half-truths, and a community that never forgives a woman for surviving things it doesn't understand. I didn't say anything, but inside, I felt something tighten. Not fear, not doubt either. More like curiosity, or maybe stubbornness. That night after work, I stopped at the diner, the only place open after 8 p.m., besides the gas station. I pushed open the door expecting to sit alone, eat a burger, and maybe think about Claire more than I should. Then I saw her. Same booth, same book, same black coffee. She noticed me before I could pretend I didn't see her. Her lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. Well, she said, closing her book with a quiet thump, if it isn't the man who saved me from a night of screaming at a dead battery. I laughed awkwardly. You mean your battery screamed at you? She tilted her head. Fair point. For a second, I wondered if I should sit with her. If it would be weird. If she'd think I was crossing some invisible line. But she slid her hand over the table and gestured to the seat across from her. Join me, she said simply. Not flirtatious. Not hesitant. More like an invitation to step into a room that no one else was allowed inside. So I sat. And honestly, the world shrank around us. She asked about my job. I asked about her book. She talked about liking quiet places, about long drives alone, about how she appreciated small talk only when it wasn't actually small. She spoke with this mix of sharpness and gentleness that made everything she said feel heavier, realer. We didn't talk about her past. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. At one point, she took a sip of her coffee and asked, Do you always help strangers on dark roads? Only the ones who look like they're about to throw their phones into the woods, I said. She laughed, and it wasn't polite or restrained. It was real, warm, surprised, like someone who had forgotten what it felt like. But then, almost as quickly, the smile faded. Not completely, just softened. You're too kind, she said quietly. People like you don't usually cross paths with people like me. I didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. But the weight in her voice told me she believed it. We talked for almost 2 hours. And when I finally stood to leave, she looked up at me with something unreadable. Be careful, Evan, she said softly. At what? I asked. She shook her head like she didn't want to explain. At getting close to me. And for the life of me, I didn't understand why that warning felt less like a threat and more like a truth she wished she didn't have to say. I didn't see Claire again for 3 days. Maybe that doesn't sound like much, but in a town this small, it felt strange. Someone who makes that strong an impression shouldn't just vanish into thin air. Every time I drove past the diner, I wondered if she was inside. Every time I saw a silver Honda, I caught myself checking the license plate. I told myself I was being stupid. She was just someone I helped once, talked to once. People come and go. That's life. But it didn't feel like she had come and gone. It felt like she had opened a door in my head and left it slightly ajar. On the fourth night, I walked into the diner again, telling myself I was only there for food. But as soon as I saw her sitting in that same booth, hair down this time, shoulders loose, staring at something on her phone, my heart hit the brakes. She looked different, not worse, not tired, more like she was trying to hold herself together while pretending everything was fine. When she noticed me, her face softened just a little. "You again," she said, and her voice was less guarded than before. "Either I'm haunting you or you're haunting me." "I think we're both haunting the same diner," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. She closed her phone immediately, a little too fast, like she didn't want me to see whatever was on it. And for a second, something flickered in her eyes. Worry, anxiety, sadness. I didn't ask, but I noticed. We talked about small things at first: the weather, the town, her coffee addiction, my terrible sleep schedule. Then, out of nowhere, she asked, "How old are you, Evan?" 24. She sighed, not in judgment, more like acceptance of something she already suspected. "And you?" 34. I nodded. 10 years. Not that much. She tilted her head, giving me a look halfway between amusement and disbelief. "That's a lot in life experience," she said. "And mistakes. And baggage. Everyone has baggage. Mine doesn't fit in a suitcase." She said it calmly, but the meaning hit hard. I could tell she was trying to scare me off before anything could start. A preemptive strike. A warning. But instead of backing off, I leaned in a little. "You don't seem like a disaster," I said softly. She stared at me for a long moment, eyes unreadable, then looked away like she didn't want to let me see something she couldn't hide. "You say that now," she whispered. Before I could reply, the diner door opened, and someone walked in, a tall guy in a worn leather jacket, eyes scanning the room like he was expecting to see someone he knew. Claire froze. Her hand tightened around her coffee cup. Her shoulders tensed. Her breathing changed, barely noticeable, but enough. The guy spotted us. Or rather, he spotted her. His jaw clenched. He didn't walk over, but he lingered near the counter, staring, watching. "Is that someone you know?" I asked carefully. Her lips tightened. "Someone I used to." I waited for her to say more. She didn't. After a minute, the guy ordered coffee, grabbed it without waiting for change, and walked out. But the tension he brought with him stayed at our table like a shadow. When he was gone, Claire exhaled shakily. "Sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't expect to see him tonight." "You okay?" "I will be." Her voice was firm, but her hands trembled slightly as she brushed her hair back. I wanted to ask who he was. Ex-boyfriend? Ex-husband? Someone worse? But the look on her face told me she wasn't ready to talk about it. So instead, I said, "You don't have to tell me anything. I'm just here." Something in her softened. Not much, just enough to see the fissure in her armor. "You're too kind," she murmured again. "Honestly, I don't know what to do with someone like you." I laughed lightly. "What does that mean?" She looked at me for a long time. Really looked, like she was searching for something in my face. "It means I don't want to break you." There it was again. The warning. The caution. The invisible line she kept drawing and redrawing, even as she leaned closer to it. She reached across the table and gently touched my wrist, just for a second. The contact was light, but it hit me like a jolt. "Evan," she said quietly, "you don't know me." "Not really. And if you knew everything, I'm not sure you'd still be sitting here." "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not." She smiled faintly, tired, sad, grateful. "You're either incredibly brave," she murmured, "or you have no idea what you're getting into." Probably both. That made her laugh again, soft and real. We left the diner together that night. Not holding hands. Not touching. Just walking side by side into the cold night air, like two people trying to pretend the gravity between them wasn't already pulling them closer. When she reached her car, she paused with the door open. "Good night, Evan," she said. "See you tomorrow?" A long silence. Then, "Maybe." But the way she said it felt less like uncertainty and more like hope she was afraid to admit. I didn't sleep much after that night. Not because anything happened between us, but because something had shifted. Before, Claire was this distant, almost mythical figure in town lore, the gorgeous older woman who kept to herself. Now she felt real, tangible, human. and I couldn't stop replaying every moment of our conversation. Still, I tried to act normal. 2 days later, I walked into the hardware store for my shift, and Bill, my boss, raised an eyebrow the way dads do when they think they've solved a mystery. "You were with Claire the other night, weren't you?" I froze with a stack of sandpaper in my hands. "How do you even know that?" He snorted. "Small town, kid. People saw her car outside your place when the storm rolled in." "It wasn't like that," I said quickly. "She just needed a place to wait out the storm." "Sure." He winked. "Just be careful. If she wanted someone, she could choose half the town. Don't get your hopes tangled." I didn't say anything, because I didn't know what to say. But that stuck with me all morning. By noon, Claire walked in. Not for me. At least I didn't think so, but to pick up a set of replacement cabinet handles she'd ordered. She wore jeans, a black sweater, and her hair was tied up like she'd rushed out the door. She looked more casual than I'd ever seen her, and for some reason, that made her look even more beautiful. When she saw me behind the counter, her entire face softened. "Hey," she said with that low, warm voice that stuck in my chest longer than it should have. "Busy day?" "Busier now," I said before my brain could stop me. She laughed, this quiet, surprised sound, and I swear something inside me melted. We talked only for a minute or two. The usual small talk, nothing deep. But there was this undeniable ease. Like we were picking up a conversation we hadn't finished. Before leaving, she slid her receipt into her bag, paused, and said, "Are you free later? I could use a hand with the cabinet installation." My heart hammered. I told myself it was just help with cabinets. Nothing more. "Yeah," I said. "Just text me your address." "Oh," she said gently. "You don't have my number yet." The yet nearly knocked me over. She handed me her phone. I added my contact. When she left, even Bill looked rattled. Claire lived 5 minutes from the river, in a renovated 2-story house, painted a soft gray. It looked expensive, but lived in. Candles half burnt, books stacked on tables, a cat curled on the back of the couch like it paid rent there. She guided me to the kitchen, where tools were already laid out neatly. "I tried doing it myself," she admitted. "Turns out I am terrible at measuring." I installed the handles while she hovered nearby, asking questions, occasionally brushing past me in ways that felt accidental, or maybe not. Every time her hand grazed mine when she handed me a screw, something tightened in my chest. We worked for an hour, talked even longer, about college, about regrets, about the version of yourself that feels more real than the one people think they see. I told her I sometimes felt stuck, like the town was a box I couldn't figure out how to climb out of. "You're not stuck," she said. "You just haven't chosen a direction yet." I didn't expect her to understand me that quickly. When the last cabinet door closed smoothly, she clapped softly. "Perfect," she said. "Seriously, you saved me." "It was nothing." "It wasn't," she insisted. "Let me at least make you dinner." I should have said no. I know that. Everything about the situation was blurring lines. But she said it so sincerely, and I didn't want to leave. So I stayed. Dinner was simple. Pasta, wine, soft music humming from a speaker on the counter. The cat wound around my legs like it approved of me. At some point, the conversation slowed. She leaned against the counter, watching me with this unreadable expression. "You're easy to talk to," she said quietly. "You too." She smiled but didn't look away. For a few seconds, the air felt heavy in a way that made something inside me drop. She stepped closer, just slightly, enough that I felt her warmth. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," she said. "You're not." Her eyes searched mine like she was confirming something. Then the moment passed. She pulled back gently and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "I should let you get home." Part of me was relieved. Another part was disappointed. But I nodded, grabbed my jacket, and thanked her for dinner. Before I stepped out, she touched my arm lightly. "I'm glad the storm brought me to your door," she said. I didn't sleep again that night either. Something was definitely happening. Something I was completely unprepared for. For the next few days, Claire occupied way too much space in my head. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her. Every time it wasn't, I told myself I didn't care. But 2 evenings after I helped her with the cabinets, she texted, "Claire, I owe you dessert. Are you free?" My heart jumped. Dessert? What did that even mean? Before I could overthink it, I replied, "Mia? When?" "Claire, now? I'll pick you up." Pick me up. Like this was a date. Or something close to it. I barely had time to change my shirt before I heard her car outside. When I opened the door, She smiled like she'd been waiting for the moment all day. You ready? She asked. Depends, I said. Where are we going? You'll see. We drove out of town, down one of those winding back roads most locals forget exist. The sky was a soft orange, fading into the kind of blue you only get in small towns far from city lights. Is this a kidnapping? I asked. She smirked. Would you fight it? No, I admitted. Probably not. She laughed, shaking her head. 10 minutes later, we pulled into a clearing by the river. I'd been there maybe once as a kid. It was quiet, isolated, the kind of place where you could hear crickets and the soft movement of water drifting across the rocks. Claire opened the trunk and pulled out a small cooler and a blanket. Dessert, she said, holding up a box. I warned you. Inside were 2 massive slices of cheesecake from a bakery in the next town over, the expensive place everyone talked about, but no one actually went to. You drove 30 minutes for cheesecake? I asked. Correction, she said. I drove 30 minutes for good cheesecake and good company. My face felt warm. I hoped she didn't notice. We sat on the blanket, the river glowing with reflections of the fading sunset. She handed me a fork and took a bite of her slice, closing her eyes like she was trying to memorize the taste. You ever do this? She asked. Just take time for yourself? Slow down. Not really. You should. Life feels different when you do. I watched her for a moment. The way the light hit her eyes, the relaxed way she leaned back on her hands. She looked nothing like the distant woman the town whispered about. She looked free, confident, calm. I like this side of you, I said without thinking. She glanced at me, surprised. What side? The one that doesn't feel guarded. She paused. The river kept moving. The air shifted. That's not a side I show often, she said softly. Why not? She scooped another bite of cheesecake, but didn't eat it right away. People expect things from me. They assume they know me, what I want, who I am. When you're older, especially as a woman, people project things onto you. I listened, trying to pick my words carefully. I don't think I have any expectations of you, I said. She smiled at that, bittersweet, like it meant more to her than she wanted to admit. The sun dipped lower. The sky turned dark purple. Fireflies appeared, blinking like tiny lanterns in the grass. She lay back on the blanket, folding her hands on her stomach. Lie down, she said. You're missing the best part. I lay beside her. Over us, the sky stretched wide and quiet, speckled with the first stars of the night. You ever feel like you're meant for something else? She asked. Something bigger than your life now? All the time. That's good, she whispered. It means you're not settling. For a few minutes, we just breathed. No talking, no planning, just existing in the same moment. Then, gently, she reached over and brushed a piece of grass off my shoulder. Her fingertips lingered longer than necessary. Can I tell you something? She said. Yeah. You make me feel lighter. My chest tightened. No one had ever said something like that to me before. Definitely not someone like her. Before I could reply, she sat up slowly, pulling her knees to her chest. I don't want to cross a line, she said. Not if it's going to complicate your life. What line? She looked at me. Really looked. And I felt like she was peeling back every layer I had. You're younger, she said. In a different place, with different expectations. I don't want to be reckless with that. But you're not, I said. You don't know that. Her voice was barely a whisper. We could both get hurt, you know. I swallowed hard. Or we could not. Something shifted again. Heavier this time. More real. She looked away for a moment, then back at me, eyes soft and unsure in a way I hadn't seen before. I don't want to stop spending time with you, she said quietly. That's the problem. I didn't move. Neither did she. The night felt fragile, like if I spoke too loudly, everything would break. After that night by the river, everything felt charged. Not dramatic, not explosive, just charged. Every time Claire texted, every time she glanced at me, every time we even stood near each other, it felt like there was this invisible line between us, one she kept drawing, and I kept drifting toward. 3 days later, she walked into the hardware store again, but this time, something was different. She looked tense, focused, like whatever brought her in wasn't about cabinet handles or small talk. Hey, she said, her voice softer than usual. Hey, everything okay? She hesitated, then nodded toward the back exit. Do you have a break? Yeah, give me 2 minutes. I clocked out and met her behind the store, where the alley opened up to the empty parking lot. She leaned against her car, arms folded, staring at the ground like she was debating whether she'd made a mistake coming here. "What's going on?" I asked. She took a slow breath. "So, someone saw us by the river." My stomach dropped. "Who?" "Doesn't matter. Small town. People talk." I swallowed. "What are they saying?" "That I'm hunting younger guys again." She said it with air quotes, but I could hear the hurt underneath. "That's ridiculous." "It's not new," she said quietly. "People have been speculating about my personal life for years. I'm used to it. But I don't want you dragged into it." "Dragged into what?" "Talking to someone I like?" The words slipped out before I could catch them. Her eyes lifted, sharp, surprised, then softened almost immediately. "You don't like making things easy, do you?" she said. But there was a smile tugging at her lips. "I'm not trying to make it hard." "I know," she said. "That's what scares me." She pushed off the car and stepped closer, stopping just a foot away. She didn't touch me, but I could feel the heat of her presence. "Tell me honestly," she said. "Are you okay with people talking?" "I don't care what they say." "You might later." "I'll deal with it later." The wind blew between us. Leaves scratched across the pavement. For a second, it felt like no one else existed. Then she looked down again. "I didn't come to ask you to choose anything," she said. "I just needed to make sure you're not overwhelmed." "I'm not." She exhaled a quiet, relieved laugh. "Okay," she whispered. "Good." We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then she glanced behind me, noticing Bill watching us through the store's window. "Your boss is staring." "He's fine," I said. "He's nosy, but harmless." She smiled, but this one was small, private, like it was meant only for me. "Do you want to come over later?" she asked. "For dinner?" "Nothing complicated. Just dinner." The way she said it, unsure but hopeful, did something to me. "I'll be there," I said. That evening, her house felt warmer than usual. Candles burning, lamps dimmed, soft jazz playing in the background. She wore a loose white shirt tucked into black pants, casual but impossibly attractive. "Hope you like salmon," she said as she plated the food. "I like whatever you cook." "Careful," she said. "Flattery works on me." We ate at the kitchen island. The conversation flowed easily, but under it all was this low hum of tension. Not bad tension, the kind that builds and builds until it's impossible to ignore. After dinner, she poured us each a glass of wine. "Come here," she said, motioning toward the living room. "I want to show you something." On the coffee table were old photo albums. Real ones, with printed pictures and handwritten notes. "This is my life," she said. "Parts one don't show people often." I sat beside her as she opened the first album. Photos of her in her 20s, confident, wild, free, flashed by. Road trips, concerts, a man in a few older pictures, which she quickly flipped past. "That was my fiancé," she said eventually. "We broke up a month before the wedding. Long time ago." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We wanted different things. It just took me a while to admit it." She looked at a picture of herself laughing beside a river in some other state. "I used to be fearless," she said quietly. "Now I'm just careful." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just listened. She turned the page, slowly, then closed the album and looked at me. "You make me feel like I could be fearless again," she said. It hit me like a punch. A warm, disorienting punch. I didn't think. I just reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Her fingers tightened around mine. Gently at first, then firmer. "I don't know where this is going," she whispered. "And it terrifies me." "Me too." She exhaled shakily and leaned her forehead against mine. For the first time, she didn't hold back. Not even a little. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Foreheads touching, hands clasped, breaths mixing. It felt like time wasn't passing normally anymore. Like the room had shrunk down to just the two of us. Claire finally pulled back. Not far. Just enough to look me in the eyes. "I should slow down," she whispered. "You don't have to." "I do," she said, though her thumb was still brushing my hand. "I want to do this right." She stood up, smoothing her shirt like she needed something to do with her hands, then paced toward the kitchen before immediately coming back. "You're too easy to be around," she said. "I forget to be careful." Maybe careful isn't always good. She gave me this look, half warning, half wanting, that made it hard to breathe. "Sit," she said suddenly. "I'll make tea. Something calming." I didn't move, so she added, "That wasn't a request." That made me laugh, which made her smile again, tension easing just a fraction. While she was in the kitchen boiling water, I glanced around the living room. Everything about her space felt like her. Soft colors, quiet lighting, a mix of elegance and comfort. A space someone made intentionally. A space someone lived in alone for a while. The tea kettle clicked off. A moment later, she returned, handing me a mug. "It's chamomile," she said. "So you don't think about whatever you're thinking about." Too late. She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide a smile. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first. Not touching. Close, but not too close. The kind of distance two people keep when they're pretending they aren't drawn to each other. "So," she said, tucking her legs under her. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." "What? Why?" "Because that's how people get closer." I raised my eyebrows. "Then you go first." She took a breath, staring down at her mug. "All right," she said. "I'll go first." She hesitated, then looked at me again. When I turned 30, I told myself I'd stop dating anyone who made me feel uncertain. I wanted stability, clarity, safety. But safety is boring, and boring is lonely. I didn't interrupt. She wasn't finished. "And now," she continued softly, "you show up. Younger, unpredictable, nothing like what I planned for myself. And I don't know whether that's a mistake or the first exciting thing that's happened in years." The room felt warmer. She raised her eyes slowly. "Your turn." I swallowed. "Okay." I thought for a moment, then said, "I've always been afraid that I'm not doing anything meaningful with my life. That I'm just drifting, watching everyone figure things out while I stay where I am." She nodded, like she understood that better than I expected. "That's not true," she said. "How do you know?" "Because drifting doesn't look like this." She gestured, vaguely but meaningfully, at the air between us. "Drifting doesn't pull people in. You're more intentional than you think." I didn't know what to do with that. No one had ever said something like that to me before. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt like the beginning of something, or the moment right before a beginning. Claire set her mug down and shifted slightly closer. Not enough to close the space, but enough to acknowledge it. "This is complicated," she said. "But it doesn't feel complicated. That's the problem." She ran a hand through her hair, then let it fall. "I keep trying to convince myself I shouldn't be doing this. That there are reasons to stop. And you keep giving me reasons not to." I couldn't help it. I moved closer too, just a little. "Do you want me to stop?" Her breath caught. I saw it. The tiny rise in her chest, the flicker in her eyes. "No," she said quietly. "That's the part one can't explain. I don't want you to stop." I set my mug aside and leaned forward. Not touching her, just giving her the chance to meet me halfway. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, and something changed. The hesitation cracked. The carefulness loosened. The guard she kept in place slipped just enough. She moved closer, so close I could feel her breath on my cheek, and rested her hand on the side of my neck. "This is where I crossed the line," she whispered. And she did. She kissed me. Slow at first. Testing. Questioning. But growing warmer, deeper, more certain with each second. When she finally pulled back, her voice was unsteady. "That shouldn't have happened. Do you regret it?" She shook her head immediately. "No," she whispered. "No, I don't regret it at all." She rested her forehead against my shoulder, breathing slowly, grounding herself. But everything just got a lot more real. I wrapped an arm around her, gently, giving her the space to decide what came next. "I can handle real," I said. She looked up at me, searching my face for something. Doubt, hesitation, fear. But I wasn't afraid. And for the first time since I'd met her, she looked like she believed me. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the window. There was a calmness in it, almost like the world had paused for a moment. I stretched and glanced over at her side of the bed. She was still asleep, hair fanned out on the pillow, a soft expression on her face. I couldn't help but smile. Somehow, despite everything, we'd gotten here, tangled in this complicated, unexpected relationship that neither of us had planned. We had breakfast together, but today it felt different. There was a tension, unspoken, like something was simmering just below the surface. I tried to ignore it, but my instincts told me not to. She noticed, of course. She always did. "You've been quiet," she said, sipping her coffee. Her eyes held that mix of curiosity and concern that I'd learned to read. "I'm fine," I said too quickly. It always came out too fast when I was hiding something. "Really?" she pressed, leaning a little closer. "Because you're a terrible liar." I laughed, but it felt hollow. Okay, maybe I'm not fine. It's just, work has been crazy, and I stopped, realizing I was slipping into excuses. She tilted her head, patient but insistent, giving me the space to speak. It's not work, I admitted finally. I don't know. Sometimes I worry that we're moving too fast. I mean me, with you. You've lived so much more, and I don't want to screw this up. Her eyes softened. You think I'm moving too fast? No, it's not that. I just, I don't want to be a mistake. I don't want us to crash because I'm not ready. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, grounding. You're not a mistake. And neither am I. We're just figuring things out, like everyone does. But trust me, don't overthink it. We have something real, even if it's messy. I nodded, feeling a bit lighter, but the feeling didn't completely leave. We both knew life wasn't going to be simple, even in a small town. There were expectations, rumors, glances from neighbors. People whispered, and we'd felt the weight of those whispers more than once. But in that moment, holding her hand, I felt invincible. Later that day, we decided to take a walk through the old town square. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles and the fresh scent of wet asphalt. We ducked under the awning of a small cafe, watching the street clear slowly. She pointed out details I would have missed, the chipped paint on the bookstore, the vintage signs hanging crookedly, the little alley that smelled of jasmine and old bricks. It's like you notice the world differently, she said. I notice you differently. I replied before I could stop myself. She froze, then smirked. Smooth. Shut up, I muttered, smiling. But she didn't stop looking at me, that knowing smile still in place. I realized I could spend hours like this, walking, talking, just noticing everything with her. As evening approached, we went back to her apartment. She suggested cooking together, which quickly devolved into laughter and minor chaos as I tried to follow her directions. She wasn't a patient teacher, but she was playful enough that it didn't matter. Flour ended up on the counter, in our hair, on the floor, and somehow we didn't care. By the time we were eating, we were both a mess, but it felt perfect. You know, she said between bites, you really are clumsy. I know. I'm charmingly clumsy. She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made my chest ache with happiness. After dinner, we settled on the couch, the apartment quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. She leaned against me, head resting on my shoulder. I wrapped my arm around her, feeling the steady beat of her heart. I love this, I murmured. This? She asked. This? Us? Right now? She smiled, eyes half closed, and kissed my temple. Me too. For a while, we just stayed there, not needing words. It was easy, natural. And despite the uncertainty, the small-town gossip, and the age difference that sometimes felt like a looming shadow, I knew this. This connection, this rhythm between us, was worth it. Because every day with her was different, unexpected, and alive. And I couldn't imagine going back to anything else. It was a Saturday afternoon when everything shifted, though subtly. We decided to take a drive to the outskirts of town, somewhere we hadn't been before. She loved exploring little forgotten roads, abandoned houses, places that seemed frozen in time. I followed her lead, enjoying the way she navigated the world with confidence, while I mostly worried about staying awake behind the wheel. The sun was warm, the sky a soft gradient of orange and blue. She pointed to a small, crumbling farmhouse on the edge of a field. I used to come here when I was younger, she said, eyes distant. It was a secret place. No one really went there. I glanced at her, noticing the rare softness in her gaze. Want to go see it? She nodded, and we parked on the grass, careful not to get stuck in the mud. The air smelled of earth and wildflowers, and the silence was so complete it felt like it pressed against your ears. We approached the old house slowly, half expecting it to crumble beneath our touch. Inside, dust motes floated in beams of sunlight, and the wooden floors creaked under our steps. She ran her fingers along the walls, tracing patterns in the peeling paint. I remember sitting here, she said quietly, thinking about everything I wanted, everything I'd lost. I stayed close, unsure what to say. Her past was always a delicate topic. She never hid it, but she also never volunteered it. I respected that. And yet, here she was, opening a small window into it. It's beautiful, I said softly. Even like this. She smiled faintly, then laughed. You always have to say something cheesy, don't you? I shrugged, grinning. It's part of my charm. We spent the next hour exploring the property, finding small relics, a broken chair, a rusty swing, a forgotten diary. She read aloud a few passages, and I listened, fascinated by her younger self's words. It was strange and intimate, stepping into a world she had left behind, sharing that part of her without really understanding all of it. By the time we returned to the car, the sun was lower, casting long shadows across the fields. She rested her head on my shoulder as we drove back. I realized then that these little adventures were more than just fun. They were how she let me in, piece by piece. Back in town, we stopped by the small diner she loved. It was one of those places that hadn't changed in decades. We sat in a booth near the window, drinking coffee and watching people pass by. She told me stories about the people who used to work there, the summers she spent helping out, the secrets she had kept close. "You make small towns feel like a whole universe," I said, feeling an odd ache in my chest. She laughed softly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just like finding someone who actually listens." There was a pause, and I realized she was studying me, waiting for me to respond. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I listen," I said simply. She squeezed it gently, then leaned back, looking out the window. "Good," she whispered. "Because I don't share this with many people. Not like this." Later that night, we walked through the quiet streets of our town. Streetlights flickered, casting pools of gold on the pavement. It felt cinematic, like something out of a movie, but it was real. I could feel her hand in mine, steady and warm, and I knew this was where I was meant to be. We paused near the old fountain in the town square. She turned to me, serious for the first time that evening. "You know, being with you, it's scary sometimes. Because I care, more than I thought I would." I swallowed, feeling a lump in my throat. "I feel the same." Her smile returned, small but genuine, and she leaned against me. "Good," she said. "Because I don't want to imagine my life without this, without you." I hugged her tight, realizing just how much she had come to mean to me. Age, past mistakes, small-town gossip, it all seemed irrelevant now. All that mattered was the way we fit together, the way we challenged each other, and the way we could just be, without pretense, without fear. That night, back at her apartment, we stayed up talking for hours, planning imaginary trips, sharing childhood stories, laughing at things only we found funny. There was a sense of permanence in our connection, fragile yet unshakable, like the calm after a storm. I knew, deep down, that these moments, quiet, ordinary, yet extraordinary in their intimacy, were what I would remember long after the rest of the world faded away. Because this, us, was the kind of story that didn't need to be rushed. It unfolded in layers, in subtle gestures, in shared silences and whispered confessions. And I was ready for every single one of them. The morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, warm and golden. I woke up slowly, still wrapped in the comfort of her arms. For a moment, I just stayed there, listening to the quiet rhythm of her breathing, feeling the softness of the sheets, the gentle pressure of her hand against mine. We didn't speak immediately. There was no need. After months of chaos, doubt, small-town rumors, and our own insecurities, we'd reached a rhythm, a kind of equilibrium. Everything felt steady, safe, real. Eventually, she stirred, stretching and letting out a sleepy laugh when she realized how close I was. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice husky from sleep. "Morning," I replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We lingered in bed longer than we should have, talking in low tones, laughing softly at nothing, savoring the simple pleasure of being near each other. The world outside could wait. Bills, work, gossip, they all seemed distant, irrelevant compared to this quiet intimacy. Later, we decided to take a walk to the little park near the edge of town. It was one of those places where memories seemed to linger in the air, the swings swaying gently in the breeze, the fountain bubbling quietly in the center. She held my hand as we strolled along the winding paths, and I felt a warmth that went beyond the physical. "You know," she said, glancing up at me, "I never thought I'd find someone who makes me feel this. Like it's okay to be myself, completely." I squeezed her hand. "I feel the same. You've changed how I see everything. Not just relationships or love, but life itself." She smiled, a quiet, almost shy expression I rarely saw. "You're not scared anymore?" she asked, teasing slightly. "No," I said honestly. "Scared? Maybe a little. But I'm more excited than anything. Excited for this, for us. We sat on a bench overlooking the fountain, the sun reflecting off the water in shimmering patterns. She rested her head on my shoulder, and we sat in silence, letting the moment stretch and solidify. I thought about all the times we'd argued, laughed, held each other through late-night conversations, and even the moments of doubt. Every one of them had brought us here, to this calm certainty. You know, she murmured, people probably still talk about us. I laughed softly. Let them. We don't need their approval. She nodded, leaning closer. You really mean that? Completely, I said, holding her hand tighter. We have something real, something worth it. The weeks that followed were a mixture of ordinary life and extraordinary moments. We cooked together, took long drives to explore abandoned towns and hidden lakes, and spent nights lying in bed, sharing dreams and fears we hadn't told anyone else. Every day, I saw layers of her I hadn't known existed, and every day, I felt myself growing, learning, becoming more confident, more grounded, because of her. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, she turned to me, eyes glistening with that familiar intensity. I love you, she said softly, almost vulnerable. I felt my chest tighten, words catching in my throat. I love you too, I replied, finally able to say it without hesitation, without doubt. It wasn't just the words. It was the understanding, the trust, the shared history that had built up over months of laughter, arguments, adventures, and quiet nights. Love had grown between us, in small, deliberate ways, until it became undeniable. We sat there for a long time, watching the world change color, feeling the breeze on our faces, letting the silence speak volumes. In that moment, I knew that age didn't matter, small-town judgment didn't matter, and even the uncertainties of life didn't matter. All that mattered was this: our story, imperfect, messy, and beautiful. Later that night, back at her apartment, we lay side by side, holding hands and tracing patterns on each other's skin. We talked about the future in hushed tones, laughed at ridiculous what-ifs, and simply existed together, knowing that whatever came next, we would face it as a team. Because this was more than a relationship. This was a partnership, a connection that had been forged through honesty, patience, and the courage to open up completely. And as I drifted off to sleep, her head on my chest, I realized something profound. Some stories don't need grand gestures or dramatic turns to be unforgettable. Sometimes, the beauty is in the quiet moments, the subtle adventures, and the way two people can grow together, each learning from the other, each supporting the other through the highs and lows. This, our story, was mine, and it was hers, and I would carry it with me forever.